Hello again, friends, and welcome to the second episode of Season 3 of The Haunting of KGGO.com. My name is B-sox, and ladies and gentlemen, for the second time, and you'll get the joke here in a second, joining me on the line for this week's interview is Allen from Dark River Paranormal. Hey, Allen, how you doing?
I am doing fantastic. It's just a great day. What's going on with you?
Okay, so for those of you playing along at home, this is why I said there's a joke involved in this. The other day, Allen and I did a complete interview, and it was a great hour of talk about the paranormal, about Allen and his travels around the state, and you know, all the ghost hunting he's done, and everything that's happened at the Stagecoach. And go to edit the interview. It would have been Monday this week, and I cannot find it on my computer. It vanished. I saved it to the desktop. I don't know what happened, but it's gone.
It's just gone.
And it
does not surprise me.
Well, that's what we were talking about. When you get into bed with some of these places, weird things happen. And it seems like since I started to do this segment on KGGO, just about every year, I get at least one weird thing that happens. Like last year with the guys from Moth. Ministers of the Haunted.
Oh, yeah.
They showed up at the studio because we were doing things in studio because, you know, COVID was going on and we'd videotape and do all this stuff. And for whatever reason, for about 15 minutes when the interview was supposed to start, the computer would not record. Like, it just would not record at all. It was weird.
It's paranormal, man. That's what this is all about.
Well, that's what John from there said. He goes, well, you know, sometimes things act up around me because he has claims that he's a psychic. And I'm like, okay, right. You know, I guess. But we're going to do the interview again. Maybe it'll be better this time. Maybe it won't. I don't know. We're going to see what happens, though. But joining me is Allen from... Allen from Dark River Paranormal is this week's interview. Allen, let's start at the beginning like we did the other day. How did you kind of get into the world of the paranormal? What's your story with this stuff?
Well, you know, as we talked about last week, I'm
so sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. No, you asked me, was I one of these geeky guys that, believed in the paranormal and, as a kid and stuff, and I didn't believe in any of that stuff. I grew up well grounded and rounded on a farm, farming environment. I had a very matter-of-fact father. Things either were or they weren't. There was no gray area in between.
Okay.
And as far as the paranormal goes, there was no such thing. There was no such thing as a paranormal. And in fact, I used to be scared of the dark. I was terrified of the dark. And one day my grandmother, she says to me, she says, Allen, she says, close your eyes. And so I did. And she says, what do you see? And I said, I don't see anything. My eyes are closed. She says, do you know what's in this room that we're standing in? I said, well, yeah, the kitchen table's here, and the chairs are over there, and so on and so on. She says, exactly. She says, the same thing that's in the dark is in the light. It's only dark.
Huh.
And at that point, I said, oh, well, that makes sense. There's no reason to be scared of the dark. So that's how I conducted the rest of my life until 1982.
And that's where things get a little weird.
That's where it starts getting a little weird. I lost my first wife, my daughter's mother. Unfortunately, it was in a fire. And we lost everything. We lost everything we owned, including, my daughter's mother. And one night, I'm sitting in this mobile home that the Red Cross had purchased for us. Everything was donated, and I'm sitting in this old crappy recliner watching WWF wrestling on a little black and white TV with rabbit ears on it.
Yep.
And I just got in putting my daughter to bed like an hour earlier. During this time, I'm hearing her talking in her bedroom. And, I'm thinking to myself, she needs to go to sleep, but I don't want to be a jerk,
Yeah.
I'll just let it kind of play out for a little bit. And so, but it continued. And so I thought, she's got to go to sleep. And I completely imagined her playing with My Little Ponies or something back in her bedroom. So I go down to the bedroom, and I peek around the corner, and I say, honey, it's time to go to sleep. And she's sitting there on the edge of her bed. And so I just turned away and started walking down the hallway again, back to my chair. And I stopped, and I thought, this is a little odd. So I just kind of peeked around. I said, honey, who are you talking to? And like I said, her feet were dangling. I can still see it. It's just like indelibly imprinted in my mind. Her feet are just dangling off the edge of this little bed. She looks at me, and she points at the closet with those little fat, chubby fingers, and with the most matter-of-fact voice said, "Mommy." And oh my God, I didn't know what to say. I strained my eyes trying to see what she was looking at.
Yeah.
And as I'm doing this, she's just laying down and going to sleep. And I was frustrated that I couldn't see what she's seeing. My heart was breaking because I couldn't see what she was seeing. You know, I was mad because I couldn't see what she was seeing because, you know, obviously it's something that I would have enjoyed to see one more time.
Yeah.
And it was from that point on that I had to figure out what this stuff was all about.
Something we didn't cover the other day in the interview, and it occurs to me now,
Sure.
and we'll get into all of the different things you've kind of done with the paranormal stuff. But in all your travels around doing this stuff, have you ever run into anything that you thought might be your wife coming back to say hello or something like that?
Oh my God, yes, and it was horrifying.
I don't mean to laugh, but when you say it's horrifying.
It was actually horrifying. I don't know if you ever heard of the gentleman. His name's Christopher Moon. He's a world-renowned psychic medium. He has his own program that he does. And when I met him for the first time, it was at the Stagecoach Inn.
Okay.
He wanted to see what it was all about. And he did the tour through there, and he was doing a live stream and such, you know, saying, "This is a crazy place." You know, he says, "I can just feel the terrible vibes coming out of here, blah, blah, blah." Anyway, making a long story short, he says, "Alan, we need to make an event here." And I says, I don't have any clue how to do an event. He says, "Well, when you're ready, get a hold of me." I said, "Okay." I thought, I'm never going to hear from this man again. 2 days later, the same gentleman calls me. He says, "Alan, we're doing an event at Stagecoach Inn." I said, "Okay." So we get it all going, and we're standing outside, and I happened to look at one of the windows, and it would have been the judge's quarters from outside. And I kid you not, God is my witness, I seen my wife standing, my departed wife, standing at the window looking out at me. And I ran inside, ran through the house, the inn, and I went into that room, and I'm asking people all around me, "Has anybody stood next to this window?" And everybody said, "No, nobody's even been in here. You know, we have a large amount of people in there." No, nobody's there. It was something I feel that was very dark, that was reflecting itself upon me to just screw with my head.
Okay, and
that was probably the most horrifying thing that I've ever seen that personally related to me.
For those of you listening at home, we'll get to exactly what the Stagecoach Inn is here in a few minutes. Allen from Dark River Paranormal is joining me on the line right now. I would say his last name, but I can't pronounce it.
Cornelison.
There it is. Allen,
it is.
Boy, that's a really creepy story, and I'm sorry if that dredged up any bad memories.
No. It's all normal stuff.
See, my wife, who doesn't believe in this stuff at all, I think if I went, I would mess with her. You know, I think I would do my best to make a believer out of her.
Sure. You know, yeah. I mean, that's what we do. That's what guys do.
Or I did tell her, I go, you'll know I'm around if there's 1 second left on the microwave, because that just drives her nuts. Or if there's a half-drank Diet Coke laying somewhere around the house. So,
there you go.
Allen from Dark River Paranormal on the line with me. This is The Haunting of KGGO.com, a KGGO.com exclusive. So you had this experience in in your home after a fire after losing your wife. From then on, what happened? How did you dive into this stuff? And
well, you know,
where did you go with it, I guess?
Back in the day, you know, we're talking the 80s. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have Facebook. You know, we didn't have none of this stuff. And so I, found a majority of my free time when I wasn't working at libraries, trying to figure out, what this paranormal stuff was all about. I was trying to, find anything I could find. I found some old articles in a magazine that related to the Warrens, and, learned about EVPs and all kinds of things I'd never even heard of before. And so I really started researching it, and pretty soon, over a little period of time, a friend of a friend of a friend says, "Hey, man, I know that you're really into looking for ghosts and stuff. I got this friend of mine that thinks his house is haunted." And I thought, this is great. This is a great opportunity for me to maybe figure out what my daughter's seen, and maybe I'll see it too.
Yeah.
Maybe I can finally make contact with my loved ones. So over time, I never did, reconnect. But I realized that doing all these investigations, that I was helping people. And all of a sudden, what I thought I wanted became less. And what I didn't realize I wanted became more. And that more was helping people and trying to find solutions to their problems, if a problem actually existed.
With that in mind, you kind of made me think of something else. There's the idea of inviting things into your home.
Yeah.
How
bad deal.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. How dangerous is that when you want to see your loved one who has passed, or something like that, and you're inviting things into your home? What are kind of the cases that come out of that?
Well, it's all trickery. In my belief, I'm very I'm a Christian. I'm very grounded to God, and I believe that when you invite things into your home, it mimics what you think you want to see, and you begin to relate to these evil things. And in turn, it turns your life inside out, because now you're paying more attention to the evil than you are to God. It destroys your life. It's a bad thing to, in my mind, recognize these things as something good. A lot of people out there, they're saying, it's just Aunt Betty making cookies. No, something has slid into Aunt Betty's shoes, and it's drawing you away from the light, true light. That's when it gets control of you, and it begins to disrupt your life horribly. Horribly. I can't emphasize that enough. This is a very dangerous profession that we're in. And balance God and evil during an investigation. It's kind of like, you're trying to keep God in your mind as you're investigating, but at the same time, you're doing other things. You're changing batteries and devices, and you're talking to your teammates. Think of it as petting your head, rubbing your belly, and changing batteries in a device all at the same time. You can't. There's no way in hell that you can balance all those things together.
Yeah.
So it's essentially, when you're investigating, even though you're trying hard to ground yourself and keep yourself and let these things come into your life, in your home, it's nearly impossible to do. And it just takes letting your guard down for a second, just letting a crack into your armor, so to speak. These things will find their way in.
So do you think all of, when, someone sees someone they know, do you think all of them are, an evil presence, or is it, sometimes it really is Uncle Bob just stopping by, or, whatever?
People are going to hate me for saying this, but I believe it's something evil. Because,
really?
As far as I'm concerned, where we're at right now is hell. Who wants to come back here? And this, who really wants, if the streets are paved in gold, who would really want to come back here? Who would want to have that opportunity to go someplace where there's no pain, there's no sickness, there's no illness, there's no hunger? Why would you want to stay here? I just lost my father here recently, and in no way, shape, or form do I believe that he is left here behind. He's in a better place, and I just don't buy it. I think whatever's out there is bad.
Okay.
It states right in the good book that we should not seek out psychics, because it's a bad thing, because what they're connecting with is not good. It's evil.
Allen from Dark River Paranormal joining me on the line right now as we talk about all things that go bump in the night. That's an interesting question, because I don't want to say there are different views on it, but there are interesting stories with it,
Right. Well, you got to understand that none of us, at least me, for instance, I don't believe I know anything about this stuff.
Yeah.
It's all a big mystery. I don't think anybody's really wrong. We're not going to really know anything until after we're dead.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that people have some interesting ideas. I can't sit here and think, well, Allen knows exactly what he's talking about or anything like that. I think people have great theories. I don't know what parts of it I absolutely believe in. Not. I just think that's an interesting question. So as we move on in this, okay, so you're starting to go around, visiting people's homes, trying to help where you can.
Right.
What were those moments like? Like, what did you do because I think, and this is going to sound maybe a little bad, but I mean, all of us have an idea of what ghost hunting looks like because of television shows.
Yeah.
It's
more or less like a...
Well, I mean, you look at like a show like Ghost Hunters, the one that really kind of got everything going, and you get this thought in your head of that's what it's like all the time. But I've been on ghost hunts. It's not like that, you know?
No, it's honestly, it's like watching paint dry. You know, it's just, it doesn't happen the way you see it on TV. You got to take in mind that some of these programs that you see on, you know, Discovery or the Science Channel or, you know, Travel Channel, a lot of those episodes sometimes take up to 3 or 4 days to shoot.
Yeah.
Because they just don't find this stuff like you think they do. And the power of editing is magical. No, it's like watching paint dry. When I do an investigation back in the day, in fact, my first my first recorder was a reel-to-reel, and it was the size of a suitcase. It had a sling on it where I could put it on my shoulder and a little microphone.
I know exactly what you're looking like, because it was like they put a piece of depleted uranium in it just for weight.
Exactly, you know, and lugging this thing up and down stairways, and you know, and you're just kind of walking around in semi-darkness, flashlight, and talking to yourself in the dark. Hello, who's here? Can I talk to somebody? I'm a paranormal investigator. I was a ghost hunter back in the day. You know, I was a ghost hunter.
All right, so doing investigations at that time, probably a lot different than what people are used to now from what they may have seen on a Ghost Hunters or Ghost Adventures or, you know, whatever.
Yeah, you know,
way
we
less
didn't have
affliction
that kind of equipment.
T-shirts.
Yeah, you know what? You're going to think this is crazy, but I did not have a millimeter or K2 back in the day. And I came up with something that seemed to work. It was interesting. One day, my daughter had received some kind of a gift or something from one of my in-laws, parents or somebody, and it was full of those packing peanuts, okay?
Okay.
And that stuff clings to everything.
Oh,
it just clings to everything. And
ask my cat.
I had this epiphany. I thought, my God, I think I read someplace that these things can put off like a static charge.
Yeah.
You know, that, you know, they're magnetically controlled or something. And I thought, I wonder. And so my next investigation I went to, I had like 20 of these little peanuts in a it wasn't, we didn't have Ziploc baggies back there. We just had baggies. You know, flip them over and fold them over and stuff.
Yeah.
And they were seeing shadows walking up and down this hallway. So I placed these peanuts like rows of corn up this hallway, you know, and there was about 5-6 rows wide, and I don't know, there must have been like 15 of them long. And I had a Polaroid Instamatic camera, and every now and then I would just kind of look in the hallway, I'd take a picture. And lo and behold, about 3 hours in, those peanuts were in disarray. And I looked everywhere, looking for like vents or windows or anything that could have, you know, moved those little peanuts. And I could not find anything. And so that was basically my first millimeter. I knew that something had to have moved down that hallway. It was just cool. And it was fun messing with stuff like that and trying to come up with ideas in order to prove paranormal phenomenon exist.
Allen from Dark River Paranormal joining me on the line right now to talk about hauntings. We're going to get to the Stagecoach Inn because that stuff is just fascinating and frankly frightening on a few levels. But I want to get to, you know, as you travel around and did some of this stuff, you know, I think we all need the good fright and the good laugh this time of year. Before Stagecoach Inn and all that, what was the moment that was, oh my God, we've really got something here? Maybe scary, maybe just a great piece of evidence. And what was the one that really made you laugh?
It made me laugh.
Like what? Was there a moment that you kind of go look back and you're like, did that really just happen?
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, it was at Edinburgh Manor.
Okay.
And I had a new investigator with us, and we were in the boiler room, and we had our cameras going and everything, and we heard this shriek. It was a shriek, and I turned around, and there's this investigator. She's new. I don't even remember what her name was now. This is back when I was Wannabe Paranormal before it was Dark River, and I looked at her and I said, "Did you hear that?" And she says, "I think that was a mouse." And I said, "That was no freaking mouse." She had the deer in the headlights, you know. She was just like rigid, and she's, "I think that was a mouse."
I could just picture a mouse screaming at the top of its lungs.
Yeah.
Oh.
And she pretty much, that was about it for her. And then, of course, later on, in that investigation, I had a vibration sensor that I was using. I choose a vibration sensor primarily because there's real no mechanics to it. It doesn't like show numbers or flash or blink. It takes a pretty good jolt to make it go off. These things, I can spit it out. The particular one I use is one that's used like on a metal door, like in your house.
Okay.
So if somebody was really trying to forcefully come in, it would go off. But, if the wind's blowing and things are tapping against the door from, leaves and sticks and things like that, it won't go off because it'd make for a pretty unrestful night.
Yeah.
So I chose this because it's pretty unsensitive, so to speak. We're down in the cafeteria, and I knew that back in the day, they really medicated a lot of people. I mean, really medicated them to the point where they were like chain smokers. We managed to get a cigarette, and I laid it on top of that vibration sensor. And I said, if there's anybody here that wants to burn one, here it is. And, of course, we have cameras rolling. Nobody's even near this table. We're probably 12, 13 feet away. It's on a solid concrete floor. I no more said that, and that damn alarm went off. And the next thing you know, the cigarette's rolling off of it and rolling onto the table and then rolling onto the floor. I won't use the word, but that same gal used the F-bomb and dropped it. And she was, like, heading towards the door, and she doesn't even know where she's going. It's pitch black down there. So, again, funny, but it was probably one of the coolest things that ever happened to me at Edinburgh. Something physically had to grab that in some manner to disturb that vibration sensor to make it go off.
That's interesting. Has there been another kind of interesting place like that you've been to? I know there's a lot to get to with the Stagecoach, and we'll unpack that here coming up next. But I'm just always interested in where people have been and the things that have happened, because I think everybody's experiences at different places are always a little bit different.
One place I was actually disappointed with, if you want, was the Sally House.
Really?
I had the vibration sensor that I like to use a lot went off one time. It was on that little kitchen table in the kitchen. But other than that, I was alone. I had cameras rolling all night long, and I was so comfortable in there that I actually laid down on the couch and went to sleep. Nothing happened. It was like, this is really disappointing,
Yeah.
What's his name from Ghost Adventures thought, this is a crazy haunted place I've ever been in. But you know what? That's how the paranormal rolls. Sometimes it just goes crazy, and other times it's just dormant. So I don't really say that it's not a haunted location. It's just that when I was there, I didn't experience anything. But one of the other crazy places was the penitentiary down in Missouri, the Missouri State Penitentiary. I thought it was incredible. There was activity that occurred about once every 45 minutes to an hour, and It was all throughout the place. You'd spend some time, and it was small, really kind of insignificant things, like bars, like tapping on the bars. You could hear a lot of that. I had what I refer to as a rogue breeze that came through, and there was 3 or 4 of us that felt it at the same time. Where it came from, we don't know. There's no breezes inside this place, especially where we were located. It was like a solitary confinement area. And so, really cool place to go to. I would recommend anybody go down there if they really wanted to get their spook on.
Allen from Dark River Paranormal joining me on the haunting of KGGO.com. My name is B-sox. I'm your host during this little adventure into the world of the paranormal. That brings us to the Stagecoach Inn. What Allen is, do I dare say what you're kind of known for with this stuff?
Yeah.
I mean, let's talk about the Stagecoach Inn. Where it's located, the history of it, how long you were part of it. Let's hear the whole story, okay?
I can do that. It's located in Ida Grove, Iowa.
Is it still around?
Yes, it is. It's a working museum.
Okay.
People can go through there. I think they have it open on the weekends, like a Saturday or something like that. There's a number up there you can call. It's posted actually on another building, which is called the Moorhead House Museum on the corner of 5th and Moorhead. And there's a number posted there, and you can call, and they'll go over and let you in, walk around. It's been well over 7 years now, but we moved up there to take care of my wife's mother. I was going to be there for a very short period of time. In fact, the job that I had, they actually paid me unemployment because they thought I was going to come back. Well, what we thought was going to be just like a couple weeks turned into 7 years.
Oh, wow.
But that's another story. I'd been there for like 6 months, and my wife's nephew, he pulls into the driveway one day. He says, "Hey, Alan," he says, "I got this place I want to show you. It's great for hunting deer." He knew I was a big-time deer hunter. He's over at Moorhead Park. He says, "Just jump in the truck. We'll take a drive." Okay, cool. So we take off, and we're going through this big park. And as we're going through the park, I could see this building appearing through the trees. And I said, "Dude," I said, "is there somebody that lives here?" He said, "What do you mean?" He said, "That house over there." He said, "Oh, no." He says, "That's the old Stagecoach Inn." He says, "It's been here, since 1856. It was a stagecoach stop, and now it's a museum." And referring to my book, commented in my book that, I was like a hootie owl. As we were going by, my head just kept spinning around, trying to get one last look at this place. And I was just fascinated by it. It was just pulling me in. I thought, I got to get in there. I got to see what's going on with this place. So I managed to get a hold of the president of the Historical Society a couple days later. And I said, "Hey, is there any way that I can get a tour to this place?" And he says, "Well, yeah, sure, not a problem." I meet him there. He unlocks the door. We walk inside, and he's telling me, "Yeah, this place was built in 1856 by John and Mother Moorhead," and just kind of give me the whole backstory. And he says, "And what's really cool is over here in this little glass case is a shoe and a dress and some coin and some keys, all found in the walls during renovation of the building." And right away, the bell went off in my head. I go, "A shoe? There's a shoe in the wall? Coins in the wall? Keys in the wall?" My paranormal spidey senses were just like jumping all over the place. And because, if you know anything about shoes being placed in walls and keys and things of that nature, a shoe was thought to hold the shape of the wearer's foot, his sole, his imprint. And they would use these shoes, to ward off evil. And they would put them in the walls in weak places in the house, referring to like windows, doorways, chimneys, any place where evil could come in at. The coins were used as an offering. The key was symbolic in locking the house from anything coming in. And so I got all this stuff going through my head as we're doing this little tour through here. And then he says, "Yeah, this is the kitchen table. It's original to the building. It was found down in the old barn." He says, "What's interesting about this table was this room was actually the hospital as well. And there were amputations done on this table." And I'm going, "Are you kidding me?" So, so now we got this. And then we go into another room, and there's more information being said to me. And finally, we go outside. And the tour, I think, in my mind, is over. And he says, "Oh, one more thing you might find interesting." He says, "This old oak tree right here. And this tree is like less than 40 feet from the front door, okay?" And he says, "This is a Native American burial tree."
Wait, what?
House was, yeah. I'm going, okay, so this house was like inadvertently put on Native American burial ground? Yes, that's right. And all of these trees, as a matter of fact, all these oak trees could have potentially been used as burial platforms for the Sioux. And now I'm like in overdrive. I'm going, okay, there has to be something crazy going on in a location like this. So I gather myself, and I go home, and I start writing up something that I could present to the Historical Society to allow me to investigate it. And so we all met one evening at the public library there at Ida Grove, and I presented myself as not as an investigator at all, just a researcher. I do paranormal research, and I would love to research this place, and maybe by chance, maybe the Moorheads are still here, So there was a little, or something, something there. So, make a long story short, it all of a sudden just blew up. There were people that were just like elated, whatever the word is, to
Elated?
Allow me to do that. Yeah, that's the word. I went to public schools, you understand. So then the other half of the room, they're like, "No, this is a bad idea." In fact, this older gal, her name was Connelly. She says, "Why in the world would we allow somebody to go in there and conjure things up all over it?"
See, now that was the interesting part of the story when we first talked, because to me, that means there's a whole lot more to this story than what you're leading on and what you've just told me from walking through this building, right?
Exactly. I think that there's a lot of people in that town that know more about what's gone on there over the years than what they'll ever let on. You got to understand, the Stagecoach Inn is the cornerstone of Ida Grove. You know, it served as the school, as the hospital, as the courthouse, as I say post office, the inn itself, a community room, a community center where people could come and argue their grievances about things. It was the cornerstone. It was like the come and go or get and go or Casey's of our era. It was a one-stop shop for everything you needed.
Well,
groceries, medicine, anything.
The other thing about it that we kind of talked about after we talked last time, there's a lot to this building where if there's a native burial ground here. There's different traditions being done with the idea of a threshold with shoes on the wall and offerings and this and that. I mean, there's a lot of different sort of energies coming together in one spot.
All at the same time. And you got to understand that, this place is full of antiques.
Yeah.
And, and it's on the National Registry of Historic Places. And so people from all over the country have donated items, whether it be an ironing board or an old pump sewing machine or tables and chairs and china.
Yeah.
And everything that was involved. Somebody somewhere down the line treasured one of those items.
Yeah.
I mean, they were, people back in those days, in the 1800s, you just couldn't go and buy a new set of dishes. You took care of them because it's all you could afford.
Yeah.
They revered these things. Beds. A lot of things happen in beds, okay? Sickness and other things.
Good things, bad things.
There's
weird things.
Bad, good, you name it. Things. So, all of these could be indelibly imprinted with all kinds of emotion.
Yeah.
So all of that is concentrated inside of this building. On top of that, you have the Oddfellows. They were in some ways connected to this place. A gentleman by the name of John Moore lived there. He was a part of the Oddfellows.
What are the Oddfellows exactly?
They were kind of like, they're still around a little bit, I think, today. But they're kind of like the Lions Club, the Moose Lodge, or something like that. They were just an organization that, helped in the community. But there were some factions that believed in weird stuff.
Okay.
They put crazy masks on their faces, and they did things with paper mache skeletons. They would have like ceremonies. They believed in reincarnation. They did all kinds of bizarre secret handshakes and things of that nature. But anyway, this John Moore belonged to this organization. But also it was a known fact that he was to be indicted on some unknown charge, and they never did really get into that. One point during this process of this indictment, he decides to take care of his livestock one morning, waters everything, feeds everything, gets on a horse, and goes what is described as 300 rod away, and that's how they used to measurements of the 1800s. They measured it in rods.
Okay.
300 rods away from the house, found an elm tree, and hung himself, committed suicide.
Oh, wow.
And I was always kind of hung up on that. I thought, how did he hang himself in this huge tree?
Yeah.
Did he use a horse? Did he use his horse? No, he couldn't have used his horse because it was tied up someplace else.
There's some logistics there that are hard to put together.
Yeah, there's some weird things going on, and that leads into another portion of this that I'll talk about later. But, yeah, there's just so much about the inn that just supercharges it in order to make it what it is today.
Interesting. Allen from Dark River Paranormal joining me on the line right now to talk about hauntings here in the state of Iowa. We're focusing on the Stagecoach Inn in Ida Grove, Iowa, which apparently is still around, and I just looked up, has a Facebook page, believe it or not.
Yeah, I created that Facebook page.
All right, there you go. Allen, so how did you... Because you essentially became the caretaker of the place, right?
Well, they had
what was your connection to it?
Well, my connection was really just being a member of the Historical Society. After I made my initial investigation there, and I'll get into that, I thought, I cannot not come back here again. So I paid my, lifetime membership so I could assure myself that I could get in there anytime I wanted to.
$29.95.
Yes, that wasn't much. So so it pretty much locked me in. But later, when we started allowing other investigators to come in there, it was always a donation. It wasn't a fee because they were a nonprofit group. It was a donation to investigate. And I had to be there. That was the only catch that, in order for people to investigate the end, I had to be there. I had to be on grounds.
Okay.
So I would just sit in my truck all night long. Well, we had a total of five teams that came in there. That was it. I couldn't give it away. Nobody ever heard of it before.
Yeah.
But everybody that walked away from there was going like, wow, this place is like over the top crazy.
Okay.
And I never could get the word out.
All right. Before we get to their stories of what they kind of got, what was the moment you really went, okay, there's something going on here? As
I said earlier, I approached the Historical Society, and they told me, yes, I could do this investigation. And that's when the topic came up about conjuring things up. Well, anyway, they allowed me 3 nights to investigate there. So, cool, I'm going to do it. I didn't have a lot of equipment. In fact, I didn't have hardly any equipment. I got rid of it all when I moved to Ida Grove. So I was very limited. I had a ghost meter, I had a flashlight, and I had one security camera that I hooked up to an old VCR so I could get it recorded.
Yeah.
And those VCRs were only good for, I think, 4 hours or something like that, 8 hours?
The tapes were 4 or 6 hours.
4 or 6, yeah.
SP
so I had
or
X? Slow speed.
Yeah, I remember.
So that's what I had, and I had it more or less the camera duct taped to a cheesy old tripod that I got at a Walmart somewhere. And I'm nothing. For 2 nights, nothing. Not as much as a bump in the night. And I'm thinking to myself, God, one more night of this drudgery. I'm not going to find anything, and so it's going to be over. So 3rd night, it's approximately, 2:30 in the morning, 1:45, something like that. I'm standing in the community room, and over to the right of me was this glass case that had a flag in it from the Civil War. I have a ghost meter on top of it, and I'm just standing there, and I shine the flashlight over to the ghost meter, kind of looked at it, and I more or less said out loud, I said, well, the house is essentially flat. And at that very moment, something grabbed the bottom portion of my coat. It was October. It was cold. I had a coat on. I mean, hard, pulled on it. And I spun around with my flashlight, thinking that maybe I'd, inadvertently, banged into something because it was dark in there. There's nothing around me. And I'm like a little freaked out because that's never happened to me before. I've been doing this since '82, and I have never been physically tugged on or scratched or anything in my entire career. And it was like, what in the hell was that? And the only thing that came out of my mouth was, is there someone in this room with me? And that's all I really said. Well, I laid my flashlight down, and I'm just kind of trying to get my faculties together. And there was enough light that was in the men's room that was adjacent to the community room that I walked in there, and there was a chair over in the corner. And so I sat in the corner so I could see everything in front of me. And I'm thinking, what just happened? This is nuts. That's never happened to me before. And as I'm sitting there, I'm starting to hear in another room, it's adjacent to the men's room, is the kitchen area. That's where that surgical, where that table was. I told you that amputations were done.
Yep.
And the china in there was clinking, the clinking of cups and plates. And it got louder, and it started it was almost like it was moving towards me. And I don't have my flashlight. I don't know what's going on. There's enough light coming in there from the outside security light, like an old farm light that's outside.
Yeah.
That I can kind of make out the silhouettes of all the furniture in there, but I couldn't see anything. And I got to tell you, I could feel the blood just rush to my feet. I was terrified. And it got louder and louder, and I couldn't get up out of the chair. I think I mentioned to you before, my legs literally felt like lead.
Yeah.
I couldn't move. I struggled to move through that little room through the kitchen area where all the sound was coming from. And I had no idea what I was going to confront in there. And I finally made my way outside. I sat on the tailgate of my Durango. The cargo hatch was up, and I looked up, and all I could see was this now ominous building just stretching out above me. And I thought, oh my God, what just happened? And so I tried to gather myself again, and, I'm trying to, all my rules that I have of ignore shock and awe was out the window. I thought, I've got to get my equipment out of there. I thought, I'm just going to leave it. And I thought, no, I can't do that. I can't leave this stuff behind. So I go into the first room, which is called the mud room or the post office room or the drover's room, whichever one you want to call it. And I was reaching around trying to find the string light. It catches me across the face like ectoplasm. I thought I was like walking through spider webs, and it was this cord. My mind is in overdrive, and I pulled the cord on, and so here I am now. I'm going through the end, pulling lights on every place, every room I needed to go into to gather stuff up by the armfuls. And I finally got everything gathered up, threw in the back of the Durango. Normally I just kind of put things away nice and neat, and you take care of these things, and they're expensive. I threw it back there. And so now I got to go back through this place and shut all the lights off. And I shut lights off as I would pass into another room. So now I'm back in what they call the drover's room or the mud room, whatever you want to call it, one last string, all right? So I got the string at the tip of my fingers, and I'm stretching my arm out as far as I could without shutting the light off. And my other hand, I'm putting on the door jamb. And I pulled the light real quick, and I pulled myself out of that place. I threw the door shut and slapped the padlock on it and boogied out of there. I was terrified. I kept looking in the back seat to the rearview mirror thinking something's going to come up front and is going to make me wreck the truck. That's how much it affected me.
So,
the following day, go ahead.
I'm assuming you went back and told them what you kind of found, right?
Well, I did.
And what'd they say?
It was a week later. They were mesmerized. I captured something. I captured a voice on the digital recorder at the point where it says there's something in the room with me. There's a small child that says, yeah, it was me. So I present this to the Historical Society. And, of course, I got my laptop sitting on this big 8-foot-long table, and they're all sitting in front of me in this library. And the next thing you know, I'm playing this thing like 60 times, and all these people are just huddled in around me where I couldn't hardly press the play button on the laptop for the recording. And they were all just completely just blown away. They thought, oh, this is awesome. The Moorheads are out there. There's children playing out there. You can investigate there as much as you want to. We want more.
Okay.
And that's when it turned into, I was starting to present a lot of things on Facebook, a lot of really crazy things I was capturing. And it got to the point I thought to myself, Alan, anybody can say a place is haunted. Anybody can say a place is active and has things going on. You can present all the stuff you want to. You need validation. So that's when I went to the Historical Society and I said, look, we need validation of this. We need to bring groups in. I want my evidence confirmed. I don't just want to put stuff out there that, is bullcrap. I want somebody to come in here and validate what I think is real. Lo and behold, people were walking out there with evidence you would not believe.
What was the single best piece of evidence someone walked out of that place with?
Well, I would say it was from Siouxland Paranormal.
Okay.
They came down and they knew a lot about what I'd posted about the judges' quarters. And Judge Moorhead, he was a land judge, and he would listen to arguments from farmers of who owned what property. Martha Moorhead wouldn't allow those farmers to walk through her inn with their muddy boots on, so he made arguments at his window, okay?
Okay.
And that's what he did. And so they decided that they were going to use what they call a beam sensor, and it would shoot across the window to like a reflector. If anything would break that beam, it would go into alarm.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, this is cool. I've never seen that like this before. This is really cool. So we're in there for maybe an hour and a half, and we're in the men's quarters, or what they call the men's room. Lo and behold, the damn thing goes off. It just starts screaming, and they're like freaking out, and they couldn't figure it out. Something has to break that beam, for it to go off. They purchased this particular sensor to investigate at Edinburgh Manor. And they said it was the one place that they were convinced that this piece of equipment would work at. And they've used it, and they've used it, and they've used it. And this was the only time that they've owned this beam sensor that it ever went off.
This is The Haunting of KGGO.com, a KGGO.com exclusive. Alan from Dark River Paranormal is joining me on the line right now. We're talking about the Stagecoach Inn in Ida Grove. You wrote a book about this, and as we talked about in the lost edition of The Haunting of KGGO.com that somehow disappeared from my computer, that this place started to have an effect on you. At what point did you realize, I need to not be here anymore?
Well, I would have to say it was probably when I wanted to strangle a minister.
That
Literally
happens,
just
though. Alan, let's be honest here.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Wow. I actually kind of just get stopped. No, I wanted to kill this man.
Oh, wow.
We were sitting, me and my wife Pam were sitting on my mother-in-law's. She had a huge wraparound deck on her house, and we're sitting there one afternoon, and we're just kind of enjoying the rays, and here comes the pastor of the church. They show up, and how you guys doing? Oh, we're doing great. My wife is just thrilled that the pastor shows up. I mean, just it's like a rock star to her. And we're sitting there, and he looks at me and he says, "So, Alan, have you found Jesus?" And I don't know what it was about that, just that real simple comment or question, but I wanted to strangle him. It's like, "You son of a bitch." And I jumped up, and I had to just refrain myself from grabbing this man around the throat and throwing him off the deck. I hated him at that very moment. He said it was something to do with Jesus, and I hated it. And I went inside. My wife comes in and says, "What in the hell is wrong with you?" And I remember my eyes were just watered. I mean, they were just welling up with tears. And I looked at it, I said, I don't know what that was all about. And it scared the hell out of me. And I knew right then and there that there was something going on in my life, and I believed at the time. I wasn't sure. I kind of believed that it involved that place, the Stagecoach Inn.
So do you think it was just the possibly negative energy of the place, soaking into you because you're there so much? Do you think something followed you home?
I believe that it was just absorbing my soul.
Really?
Yeah, I do. I thought I had power over it. In fact, when I realized that there was something that was in that home with us, I kind of came to the conclusion that I was in their home bothering them.
Yeah.
Now they were going to invade my space. And I remember my wife's brother was going to come back for his mother, which is my wife's mother's birthday. And he's a minister. He's an ordained. He didn't get it off the internet. He's an ordained minister. He went to all the seminary schools and all this. And I remember sitting on the stairway, and I said, "I don't know what you are, but if this continues, I will have you removed." And 3 days went by, and I knew I was going to talk to Mike. His name's Mike. I knew I was going to talk to Mike about what was going on. We were all one morning when they arrived, sitting at the kitchen table. We're talking, about all the stuff we want to do and see and things. And Mike has a traveling companion. He just through the ministry likes to, go places with him.
Yeah.
Person all of a sudden says, "The oddest thing happened to me last night." "Oh, what's that?" "Well, I was laying in bed and I felt as if I couldn't move. I was just like, I was impressed in my bed and I couldn't move." And she's like, I could turn my head, and from my room, I could see the footboard of Mike's bed. But Mike was standing at the foot of his bed, staring at the wall in his pajamas. And I was like, oh, my God. Whatever's here is, like, immensely powerful, and it's showing itself to me in that manner now.
Wow.
So I didn't pursue it. It's like, that's cool. You want to pass the bacon?
I can imagine the look on your face. That's cool.
So, yeah, so this place, it definitely had a hold on me, and I'm glad I'm away from there.
Okay, let me ask you this. We're starting to get a little long in the tooth. What do you think is at the Stagecoach Inn? What do you think is it? Is it just just a mixing bowl of weird energy, or do you think there's actually something there?
I believe there's both intelligent of some kind, which would basically be a demonic type activity,
okay,
and a lot of residual energy. The best way I can describe it, it's like an onion. It just has layers and layers and layers to it. There's so much that goes on out there that is just hard to believe. You've heard of Eric Klein.
Yes.
I believe he was on your show like the first year.
Yep.
He came out and investigated twice. The second time he was there, he was very concerned with me. He said, "Alan, you've changed." And I thought, well, you're crazy. I haven't changed. Get away from me. In fact, I started relating to a lot of people that way. I lost a lot of friendships due to this place. It had its teeth in me, and I didn't want to listen to anybody. But on one of the occasions that he was out there, we were upstairs in what they call the women's quarters. Everything back then was segregated. Even if you were married, the men stayed in one spot, and the women stayed in another spot. And we're sitting there, and we're doing, our thing, and we all hear it at the same time. We hear this shriek, a scream, and it emanated from the staircase. Eric was like, oh, my God, I just heard that. And so we had my laptop there. We had the Audacity running. And so we played it back, and sure enough, it was there.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it was wild. We also caught it on the camera that I had placed. By now I have several cameras, and I have them all running on DVR. And I had this camera down at the base of the staircase, looking up the staircase, and it was loaded with a microphone. It had audio to it. The following day, I went over that evidence, and that scream was right there. Okay.
Boy.
And so I presented it on Facebook, and of course, I get a lot of feedback. Well, maybe it was, an owl or something.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe it was. And I'm a big-time debunker. I don't mind debunking anything. Like 2 days later, I go and get one of these whistles like a gym coach would use. And I did a whole presentation on it, the whole video thing. You can see it on the Dark River page. But I literally took this whistle, and I positioned myself at the very edge of each tree that might have been near the house at each individual spot where a camera was located. And I blew this whistle as loud as I could. Well, later I compared each of the sounds side by side, and you could obviously hear this scream like a banshee came from within inside of the inn. You could barely hear this whistle when I blew it. So that was, in Eric's mind, it was just like, that's it. This place is crazy.
Allen, let me ask you this about the place.
Sure.
As far as it got its hooks into you and with everything that happened, I'm trying to figure out the best way to ask this. So I know the question in my head, I don't know how to word it exactly. Okay. Do you think you got close to what is actually there, or are there still many more layers to this onion?
I have no idea what's out there, buddy.
Okay.
I just know that whatever's there is dark and it's dangerous. If you're a paranormal investigator and you poke that proverbial paranormal stick into that bee's nest, you will get stung. I also know if you go out there and just do a basic tour, you're probably fine. But when you start poking, that's when things happen. Although I will say this, on one of the occasions I was out there just kind of investigating around during the daylight hours, a couple nice old ladies, they were probably in their early 70s. Hello, anybody in here? And I real quick, I'm stuffing on my millimeters and stuff in my pockets and stuff. And they said, is this place open for tours? I said, yeah, sure, come on in. And they walked inside, and one gal was standing there. All of a sudden, she just tipped over. Just literally, she says, I don't know what just happened to me. She says, my head spun around, and I don't know what just happened. I said, oh, you're just old, I said that in my mind. But, it was like, okay, something doesn't like her very much. Because she said, that never happens to me. She said, I don't know what just happened, but it just felt like the whole room just moved. And I thought, yeah,
that sounds about right. At the end of the conversation in the first version of this, you told the story about these guys that Vietnam vets who stayed in the place as a kid.
Yeah, that would be Mr. X.
Okay, Mr. X. I'd like you to recount that story if you can, because that was truly terrifying.
Absolutely. Well, Mr. X his name is actually Leroy. I called him Mr. X in the original video because at the time he didn't want anybody to know who he was, but now he's good with it now.
Okay.
His name was Leroy. When he was a child, 16, 17 years old, him and some of his friends thought it'd be a really cool idea to spend the night at the old Stagecoach Inn. Now, you got to take in mind that at that time, it was just a rundown old place.
Yeah.
It didn't look nothing like it looks today, okay? And there's other stories involved with satanic stuff that went on there, but we'll get into that maybe later. But anyway, they decided they wanted to see what it was like to live in the 1800s, so they brought some canned goods along and a lantern and sleeping bags and flashlights and things like that. And as he described it, they kind of horsed around and played around until about 1 o'clock in the morning. Well, they decided they were tired and wanted to go to sleep. Well, they were in what is called the classroom area. It was really the only area of the old inn that had solid enough floors to hold them.
Okay.
So they're laying there, and they all kind of drift off to sleep. And Leroy, he wants to reposition himself, so he rolls over. And as he does, he looks in one direction, and what he refers to then is seeing two red eyes, or lights. He said they were like the old-fashioned pin lights. and they were red. And he said they were about as far apart as what human eyes would be.
Okay.
And he said he was just startled. He didn't know how to even wrap his head around that. So he wakes his two buddies up, and they seen the very same thing. So he says, as he put it, he says they shone. He didn't say shine. He said they shone their flashlights in the direction of those eyes. And he says, as God is my witness, Alan, he says, as we shone our flashlights, there was no substance above or below those eyes. There was nothing there.
God.
And it just kept on moving towards them. And they all freaked out, and they jumped out the window. They left everything behind. They had a car parked right outside. They ran right past it and went into town. This guy went on. He was drafted into Vietnam. He ended up being a tunnel rat. He won 3 Bronze Stars for bravery, 3 Purple Hearts. He was air mobile. He had many Army commendations. And he says to this day, when I interviewed him, he said if he ever seen anything like that again, he would break glass to get out of there because he's not going to attempt anything he does not understand.
Wow.
That story blew me away. You know what? I think about that place every day. You know, I can't get away from it. In fact, I think of it as kind of like a bad relationship.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those relationships, you know, it's toxic. Feel, you know, it wasn't that bad. I'm going to give it, another chance. We're going to try it again. And this time it's even worse than the last time.
Okay.
You know, and that's what it's like. That's what it had. When it had its grips on me, that's what it was like. It was like a bad relationship. In fact, after, 4 or 5 days of processing myself, checking my pulse and my heart rate and feeling like crap, all of a sudden it was like, oh, you know what? It wasn't that bad. I don't even remember really what happened. It wasn't that bad. I'm going to go back again. And I did this time after time after time for 7 years. I would take off lunch from work. I would go out to the inn, have my lunch at the inn. I would come back and go to work. After work, I'd go back out to the inn. I always had the equipment in my truck. And I'd investigate there until, close to dark. And I did that over and over and over again for years and years and years.
Wow.
And it just, it had a hold on me. It was bad. It was really, really bad.
It's an amazing story, Alan. Alan
and
from...
It's all in the book.
And we'll talk about that. Alan from Dark River Paranormal joining me on the Haunt Team, KGGO.com. The book is out there. How do people get the book about the Stagecoach End, which I don't have the title?
Obviously, you can go to Amazon. It's Amazon, Ghost and Legend Stagecoach Inn. You can get a copy there. Or a signed copy, you can simply go to my Dark River Paranormal page and just drop me a message. Say you want a copy of the book, and I'll send you a link to a PayPal account, and you'll get a signed and personalized copy.
Oh, perfect. You said you were going to. Are you going to work on another book?
I am. It has to do with my last investigation out there. It was in 2018.
Really?
It was, about 6 months after I came back to Ankeny. I was asked to go and do some video work up there for another show, and they were going to use some of the clips as cutaways for this program. And so I went up there reluctantly. I really didn't want to go. In fact, I talked to a gentleman by the name of Coyote Chris Sutton. Some people may know him. He's been on the Dead Files. He's been on Ghost Adventures. He's been on a lot of different shows. And he was basically counseling me, thinking, Alan, if you're really, that terrified, you probably shouldn't go because bad things are going to happen. And this went on for weeks. And it finally come down to the gun where I had to either, do it or not. And I said, okay, I'm going. And so I went up there and I did an investigation, and it went really sideways. And I got a lot of really cool footage. The spinning wheel, I got, shadow figures. It's all there. And anyway, this thing fell through, so I put together a little video, put it on YouTube, and it's called Haunted in the Woods 2018. It's on my YouTube channel, on my Alone and Haunted channel.
Okay.
And it's pretty cool. Real quick, one more really cool piece of evidence that I caught from the Stagecoach was seeing the spinning wheel turn. I was up there trying to debunk why the vibration sensor would go off so much on the staircase. And I just happened to pan around into the room where the spinning wheel was located, which was also the old school classroom area. And as I panned to it, the wheel turned backwards about 3 inches, and then suddenly just rotates forward. And I caught it. It was like, "Are you kidding me?" And in fact, I think that's what I said. Are you kidding me? And there was nothing there. absolutely nothing. This is broad daylight.
Oh.
When this occurred. It's also, you can go to the Dark River Paranormal page and you can see it for yourself.
All right, we'll put links to all this on the page. In fact, I found Ghosts and Legends of the Stagecoach Inn on Amazon. I'll put that link up on the page as well. Allen, thank you so much. I hopefully this version of the interview saves, because I'd hate to ask you to do it again. But thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, and if people want to get a hold of you for ghosty type stuff, whether it's an investigation or maybe they have a haunting in their house and they're looking for some advice, they can contact you. Correct?
Absolutely. They can contact me right there in the Dark River Paranormal page. My phone number is listed. Just drop me a message. I'll get in touch with them and we'll talk about it and set up a time for me to come out and take a look and see what's going on. Again, I'm not your typical investigator. I don't really interact with what's going on there, and that's chosen by me to do so. I try not to open myself up anymore to things that I don't see. So I do a lot of observation, and I observe, and I try to come up with conclusions. I'm a big-time debunker as well. So if you want to find a ghost in your house and really want to find a ghost in your house, get convinced that you do have one, call somebody else, because I am going to tell you the truth. You either do or you don't. There's no gray areas.
Yeah.
And I will give you what you really need to know.
All right. Allen, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome, sir.